Dear participants, good evening and greetings to everyone. My name is Amit Sharma and I'm from the IIA Delhi chapter. This is actually truly an international event since today we have a lot of participants from outside India as well. And I would like to start by thanking everyone for taking out time to attend this webinar. I'm sure all of us will acknowledge that the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has created extraordinary circumstances, wherein organizations are facing multiple issues from right down from supply chain disruptions to business continuity challenges. Even the fittest have been put to an extreme test. The new BAU, or as we call it, business as usual, is finding its way to the new normal. Every crisis, though, brings along a ray of opportunity. So while the COVID-19 has challenged the status quo, it's also given us a unique opportunity to pause, think, and realign to the changing realms. So given the above context, the IIA Delhi chapter is glad to host this webinar on the subject of realigning internal controls during changing times. A few hygiene points I'd want to make. Going forward, I'm introducing our session for today's our speaker for today's session, Mr. Shailendra Taneja. Shailendra, good evening and thank you for taking out time for this session.
Thank you,
So,
Amit.
Mr. Taneja is actually currently working as a senior vice president of internal audit at the Singapore-listed company Olam International Limited. Olam is a leading food and agribusiness company operating across the value chain of more than 60 countries, and they have an annual turnover in excess of US 25 billion. Shailendra has more than 20 years of experience in internal audit and has been working in Olam since 2002. His areas of specialization include managing global, cross-functional and cross-cultural audit teams, anchoring and conducting complex operational audits, operational risk mapping, data analytics, and fraud detection. He also has been working on identifying new tools to increase the impact of the internal audit function, as well as improving stakeholder relationships with internal audit through active engagement. Shailendra is a chartered accountant from the Institute of Chartered Accountancy of India, and he also holds a Bachelor of Commerce from Delhi University. He is also currently in the Board of Governors for IIA Singapore. Let me hand it over to Mr. Shailendra, and once more, thank you and a pleasure to have you for this session. Over to you, Shailendra.
Thank you so much, Amit. Thanks for the detailed introduction. Thank you to all the participants coming for the webinar. I know Friday evening listening to an audit webinar is not an easy thing, but I guess in today's environment where all of us are stuck at home, nothing much to do, I hope the next 1 hour could be an entertaining session for you guys. So I think the session theme is around realigning internal controls during changing times. And the caption for my session is Alone Together, which I guess a lot of you would kind of resonate with. I mean, it resonates with all of us in a sense that in today's environment, due to COVID, where all of us are stuck at home, working from home, working alone, but at the same time, I guess we are all together in this situation of pandemic to see how we could navigate during these tough times. So of preparing for this session, so the key ideas which came to my mind was I think it is a time for the internal audit fraternity to really push forward and move on from the current situation to see how these challenging times could be changed into some set of good opportunities for us. So that was the whole thought process with which I designed this short module, to see really how the internal audit function could seize this as an opportunity to see how we could realign ourselves. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk about, first and foremost, I think let us try and understand what is this pandemic risk, what is so unique about pandemic risk. With that, let's look at what are some of the risks which are getting heightened across the paradigm of various industries during a crisis situation, during a pandemic situation like the one which we are going around. Then I'll take some time to take you through on what are some of the coronavirus specific scams and frauds which we as an internal audit function should be wary about. Then given all this backdrop, how really we position ourselves, and like I mentioned initially, to really seize an opportunity and to kind of realign ourselves and to see how we kind of reinvent the internal audit function given this backdrop. So before I go into the presentation, although Amit gave a very quick synopsis about a quick summary about Olam, for many of my IIA team members from India, very quickly, I come from Olam and I have been working with Olam International. We are listed in Singapore. I have been working with Olam for almost 19 years now. Olam itself is a fairly new, it's a fairly young company, I must say. We started in 1989, so roughly 30 years plus of operations. Today, as we speak, so Olam is a global supply chain manager of agricultural commodities. Some of the key commodities that we deal are in cocoa, coffee, edible nuts, spices, cotton. And in all of these commodities that we deal with, we are one of the leading, we are among the top 3 leading supply chain managers of those commodities, and we physically procure and process those commodities. So as you could see in this slide here, we are present in, we started our operation with one single product in 1989, which was cashew nuts. From there on, we moved to 45 portfolio of 45 products. In 1989, Nigeria was the operations with which we started. Now we operate in more than 60 countries. Our current turnover is in excess of 30 billion and employee strength of more than 40,000 employees. So in a way, Olam is really a truly global organization. We are present, our operations are there in almost all the, critical and big geographies in the world, all the continents barring Antarctica. So very diversified operations for us. So I think that will also help for me to really share in terms of, how a diverse operation does get impacted by these pandemic, and could be some learning for some of you guys who have a similar kind of a broad operations. And quickly, in terms of our shareholding, Temasek Holding, which is the investment arm of the Singapore government, holds more than 51%. So 53.4% of the shareholding in Olam is by Temasek, followed by another big shareholder is Mitsubishi Corporation from Japan. So these two shareholders combined hold more than 70% of the Olam shareholding. So Olam has a very strong shareholding base, which really helps us to pursue our long-term objectives and not really being too worried about daily volatility in our share price and all. And like I mentioned, some of the product portfolios that we are present in is cocoa, coffee, edible nuts, rubber, spices. So although you might not see Olam as a product when you're going to a supermarket to buy any product, because we are not into branding, but we call ourselves as brands behind brand. So if you go to a Starbucks coffee, most likely the coffee that you're drinking, the coffee beans are coming or are supplied to Starbucks from Olam. Or if you eat a chocolate like a Ferrero Rocher chocolate, and there is a hazelnut inside that Ferrero Rocher round chocolates, the hazelnut, most likely, because we supply 90% of the world's hazelnut globally, so that hazelnut must be sourced and coming from Olam to you. You must have tasted those Oreo biscuits. So that black chocolate powder is a proprietary powder which Olam prepares. Or if you happen to be in US in eating a burger in McDonald's, so the dehydrated spices, garlics and onions are coming from Olam factories in US. So not a direct presence of Olam into the brands, because we are not into branding, but a lot of brands do depend on Olam for their continued supply chain. So this was a quick introduction about Olam. You could see more of that on our corporate website. Okay, so coming to the first part of the session is really trying to understand what is it about pandemic risk. Why this pandemic risk is something which really creates a kind of a threat for all of us, and why a pandemic risk is such a big force. So for this, I think we firstly need to understand what are some of the specific peculiar elements that makes this pandemic risk such a big threat. First and foremost, I think we need to understand that pandemic risk, by definition, it is something which cannot be diversified. What do I mean by this? So I think a lot of us would agree that diversification is used by corporates as one of a big risk mitigation. So diversification in itself is a big risk mitigant. So for example, if I am a single country operation, I diversify my operation into various countries, so that if anything happens in one particular country, if my operations are impacted in one particular country, the other countries can still produce good results for me. So I'm using diversification as a risk mitigant by geographically expanding or diversifying myself. Or I could also do diversification in terms of the multiple product portfolios that I could bring, multiple sales channels lines. So I'm using diversification as a tool to mitigate my risk. But in a pandemic situation, diversification doesn't work at all, because pandemic is global. So imagine if my operations, Olam's operation, or any of your operations are impacted in US, you can't say, okay, I will increase my operations in Europe, because, excuse me, Europe is also facing huge pandemic risk. I can't start pushing my operations in China, because hello, China is also suffering from pandemic. So because of the global nature of pandemic, the diversification as a risk mitigant tool doesn't work at all. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of global companies suffer, because there is no mitigation through diversification that they have been using traditionally. And in this case of pandemic, it doesn't work. So this is one of the key features which makes pandemic risk such a big threat. Then the other component related to pandemic risk is that a pandemic risk doesn't leave any uncorrelated assets for us. So what happens, in a typical crisis situation? So let's say if I'm in a crisis situation, my equity markets are falling down. I will say, okay, I invest in, for example, in real estate market, or I invest in metals. So I can change into different product class or different asset class. But again, given the global nature of pandemic, there are no uncorrelated assets. All the assets are going in one direction, and which is basically going south. So no uncorrelated, it doesn't leave any uncorrelated assets for us. So that again makes pandemic risk such a huge threat to face. And pandemic risk is something which is really a high velocity risk. And we know, I think all of us will know, when I say high velocity risk, means a risk which travels at a very high speed. And with the speed of the risk, the higher the speed of the risk, high is the impact. So just to give you an example, imagine if I have a bullet in my hand, and if I have to throw a bullet at you, it might at best give you a scar. Imagine if I have to fire the same bullet at you, it can kill you. So it is the same bullet. The only thing that is different is the velocity or the speed at which the bullet travels. So which means velocity or the speed creates impact. And same is the case with pandemic risk, that it's a high speed risk, and that's where it is creating such a huge impact. Imagine 4 to 6 months down the line, this was in nobody's radar. We were all having happy lives, stock markets were all-time high, and suddenly 5-6 months down the line, we have, all of us, majority of us have faced a situation of lifetime, never heard before, that in a truly modern world where we have all sorts of innovation at a press of button, the pandemic has come and crippled us, the best and the most innovative of the geographies and the countries. So because it is a high velocity risk, it doesn't give you any time to react to those risks. So again, because of the high velocity nature of the pandemic risk, it is able to create that kind of an havoc. And also pandemic risk, one of the resultant of pandemic risk is it creates a time of packing up for the shell businesses, for the businesses who were so far being thriving, doing some kind of an accounting jugglery or accounting circus, some manipulation in their accounts. Because what happens in pandemic risk or a pandemic situations, the markets are typically very depressed, and that's a time where those sort of tricks that a typical accounting frauds happen through, it won't happen in a depressed markets, and it will be a time for where a lot of such businesses would get exposed. And we have seen, I think all of you would agree, in last 3-4 months you have come across some of the major companies declaring losses for past 10-12 years, which they have never declared. Wirecard, for example, in Germany, which they call it as a Enron of Europe, huge losses. Some example in Singapore, companies declaring losses which they haven't declared in past. And I guess, like Warren Buffett has put it very beautifully in one of his quotes, that when the tide is low, you know how many people are swimming naked. So I think this is a situation when the tide is high, you don't know what's underneath. But when the tide is low in such situation, the real meat of those companies come out. So I think these are some of the components that we need to have in mind. Of course, all of us know pandemic risk and the impact it is creating, but I think these are some of the important elements that we need to keep in mind, that there is no diversification that could help us, there are no uncorrelated assets that could help us, the speed of the pandemic risk, and because of the depressed market, it creates such a suffocation. So I think these are some of the elements that make pandemic risk such a force to reckon with. And given this background, pandemic situation, the COVID situation today has created environment of uncertainty for us. And as we know, the more is the uncertainty, the risk also increases. So I think let us now try to understand that in this situation of pandemic risk, where the uncertainties, the unknown have increased, what are some of the risks which are getting heightened? And here, when I was trying to, prepare a broad theme of risk, I am just, looking at risk which possibly cuts across various industries. So it is not just because I'm from Olam, I'm not put something which is heavy on agri. I think some of these themes of risk, which you will see in the following slides, hopefully will be applicable to most of the industries. It essentially cuts across. Let us see what are some of those risks which gets heightened inherently as a result of a pandemic risk. First and foremost, health and safety risk. I guess all of us would agree that the biggest casualty and impact of COVID-19 is an impact on human life. So many deaths, so many fatalities, so many positive cases in millions. So the human life has been the biggest receiver of COVID-19. So what happens in today's environment is, imagine when all of us resume office. I am assuming a lot of us are still working from home. In Singapore also, I am working from home. A lot of offices in Singapore are still not open, and I guess in India also this would be the case. So imagine when all of us resume office. So resuming office is not only going to be an operational risk, it is going to be a huge human risk. It is going to be a huge human risk, where even when the organization have put their best foot forward in terms of putting the best safety standards, best precautions for employee safety and all, but ultimately when all of us go to the office, we need to feel safe that we are safe coming to the office. And this is one risk which a lot of us have never realized that would come into play when we will be going to the office. So I think it is going to be a huge challenge when all that workforce comes back to the office. Huge challenge for the organization to give assurance to their employees that they are safe coming to the office. It will lead to really various combinations, whether by HR or the other BCP or the Stratcoms, to see which teams would get started, what are the timings, staggered timings and all. So I think that itself will create a heightened risk for all the businesses. Then the second risk is inventory, and related risk is risk of liquidity. So imagine with a lot of this disruptions, closure of ports and all. So there is a situation where a lot of corporates might sit on pile of inventories because of the slowing in the demand, slowing in the shipment, and it would have a multiplier effect, choking off your working capital. If you are in an industry like us in agri commodities, you will have to be wary about the shelf life, quality issues, expiry of stocks, and also I guess inventory. All of us, as an internal auditor, would agree is one class of an asset where assurance is required on the integrity of inventory through physically going and citing the inventory. So that itself, because our ability to not visit and see the warehouses, I think it creates heightened risk around inventory in terms of the integrity of the inventory itself. So I think integrity of the inventory again could be a big issue. I see clearly is a heightened risk. Moving on, credit and counterparty risk. I think this is one bucket of risk which is going to materialize in a big way. It is already materializing. Again, like I mentioned, because in current situation where demand is totally squeezed out, where consumers are sucked out of the system, it is creating a choke for the businesses. In turn, the businesses are facing pressure from the banks to service their loans, or they are facing pressure from the counterparties who have extended them those credits. I was reading one survey where the insurance companies are already saying that on credit insurance side, they are expecting credit insurance losses in excess of $50 billion. So I think we would see there are going to be a lot of credit defaults, counterparty defaults, and squeeze in the credit insurance as a risk mitigant. And I think insurance is not a mitigant. Essentially, it's really transferring of your risk. So you would see some of those really credit and counterparty risk getting materialized. Then I think another bucket of risk is trading risk. And when I say trading risk, it is essentially market risk related to high volatility in the markets, and all segment of markets we are seeing exceptional level of volatility, whether it is equity markets, currencies. In our case, like we deal in agri commodities, there is a futures markets for agri commodities, a huge volatility in those markets. So I think that has also created an environment of a heightened market risk. Moving on. Another risk which I feel is getting heightened is third-party service provider. Majority of organization, or I could safely say all of the organization today, they rely extensively on service providers. So I think it will be very essential for organization to really look at which are all the service providers they are relying on, and out of those service providers, which are critical to them. And those critical service provider, what is their condition? Are they going through some challenging times? Because if they have to shut their shop inadvertently, whether we like it or not, our businesses are also going to impact. So I think this is again one important area which we as an internal audit should pick up, that look at our all the service provider, and especially service providers in IT, I think like cloud provider or a warehouse provider. So if they are facing any I think solvency risk or existential risk, it will fall upon us. So I think we'll have to be prepared ourselves. Like I mentioned, look at the risk of your service provider, which are the critical ones, and do a quick health scan of those service providers. Cybersecurity and fraud risk, one of the risk which is getting heightened in the current situation of COVID, in a situation where all of us are working from home. I mean, as much as IT security teams in each organizations are trying to put additional layer of security in work from home environment, but I would believe it cannot match the similar posturing of security which is available if we are working from office. So it cannot be at the same level, no matter how much work from home security measures are tightened. So it leaves that vulnerability because of work from home. And another component is because today in COVID restriction on movements, A lot of commercials are happening online. People are transacting more than ever before online for everything. So it creates higher possibility of IT enabled or cyber enabled fraud. I have a couple of slides to talk more about the fraud risk, which I will open as one of the elements of the heightened risk, which I want to talk in more detail. Then contract execution is again going to be one risk which is getting heightened. There will be a lot of finger pointing between the counterparties, again because of the supply chain disruptions, port closures, country restrictions. The counterparties, whether it is your supplier or your customers, you are not able to supply to your customers, or your suppliers are not able to supply to you. So my guess is, once we reopen offices, legal department and the insurance department in any organizations are the one who would be the most busier. They would be the one who are getting extreme amounts of business calls from the different counterparties, and they are trying to get into resolution with them. And I guess contract execution, one important thing which we also must understand is, I do see in contracts, one of the things which now is playing out is as a very important factor in determining the execution of a contract is force majeure clause. I think force majeure clause, a lot of us auditor, in fact I also do when I'm visiting and doing any audit, is I will go through the contract terms, and as long as the force majeure clause is there, I feel okay, it's taken care. But and anyway, we as an auditor are not legal expert, but I think now suddenly force majeure clause has become the most important clause in any contract, because if you have not defined pandemic as a force majeure situation, the other party can sue you for non-delivery or non-execution of the contract. No regulation can, even if you can say that it's a government imposed lockdowns and all, they will say no, but in the force majeure clause you didn't put pandemic or lockdown as a situation. So my limited understanding, like I said, I'm not taking a disclaimer, I'm not a legal expert, but my limited understanding, this is my discussion with some of my legal friends, is that force majeure clause is something what you define between the counterparties, and that is the start and end of the force majeure clause. There is nothing like a standard force majeure clause. Whatever between the parties, two parties in a contract define as a force majeure clause, largely it will be governed by that definition only. So imagine if nobody has mentioned pandemic, which I feel a lot of us would have missed, nobody thought about this, then we are in a big trouble. The other parties could simply sue us, and the force majeure clause, if pandemic is not defined as one of the force majeure condition, is not going to help us. Then operational resilience. I would say operational resilience in itself, it's not a risk category, but like I said, a pandemic is such a situation which has put even the fittest to the test. So I think this would be a test for organization who can show resilience. They are only going to survive and going to go forward in this pandemic situation. And what do we mean by resilience? Means the ability of organization to get back into shape, to get back into a status of normalcy. So the organization who are able to quickly come back on their foot, or quickly get back to a situation pre-COVID, I think those are the one who would be not only surviving this, but who are going to thrive in this. So I think this is these 8 themes which I defined in my 2 slides. Like I said, these are just some thought-provoking themes, and it is not a laundry list. So I think it is useful for us as an IA function to really look back into our own organization and see that what are some of the risks which as a result of pandemic has heightened, and what are we doing as an IA function about it. So moving on, like I said, one of the risks that we see in pandemic which is getting heightened is fraud risk. So I think let us then understand why suddenly fraud risk has become a heightened risk, and what we should do as an IA function to kind of mitigate and control that. So what are some of the elements which play role in the current situation, which makes the probability of fraud risk much higher? Let us try to understand that. Firstly, I think there is clearly an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty. And what happens in an atmosphere which is surrounded by fear and uncertainty is that a lot of us do not act with the same amount of alertness if we are under fear or if there is a situation of uncertainty. But that is a situation which works perfectly for the fraudster, a fear of atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, which is there in the current situation. So this is leading to higher incidences of fraud. Then fraud is also getting increased in the current scenario because of reducing staffing level. Majority of us are working from home, so some controls, some way of working is getting compromised. Reduced mobility, especially for the controls which require physical oversight. So there the probability of fraud can increase. And I think this is one element which all of us as an internal audit or risk management manager should see, that what are the controls which are getting compromised because of the physical oversight. I think there we need to put additional layer of control, like the inventory example I took. Inventory, whatever assurance you get through the various documents and sign off, I think the ultimate control is you have to cite the inventory. Nothing can beat that. So imagine if in today's situation we are not able to cite the inventory, inherently the inventory risk will get heightened. So I think the controls which are cannot be performed through physical oversight, there the fraud will increase. SOD controls in today's environment is getting compromised. Segregation of duty control, because again alternate working arrangement, work from home arrangements, so then it might lead to a possibility of fraud. Then I think also there is continuously a pressure on the business to keep the business running. So in such a scenario, there is always a low focus on compliance, control, systems, and process. So then the incidence of fraud or the fraud risk get heightened. So I think these are some of the factors which are leading in current situation for fraud risk to thrive. And having said this, let us try to understand what are the various kind of fraud risk that are typically picking up in today's environment. So like I said, this current situation of uncertainty and fear, it is a perfect situation which the fraudsters thrive on. So like they say, fraudsters are not sitting in any sort of a self-isolation, or they are not self-quarantined themselves. They are out there in open, trying to make most of this opportunity. So let us just see some examples of what are the various kinds of frauds which we are seeing are picking up in today's environment of COVID-19 or today's environment of pandemic. First is there is increase in payment or banking related fraud, which is very obvious. Like I said, work from home, accounting teams are getting overstretched, even the banking staff. So although bank comes under essential services, but even today a lot of banks are operating with a limited strength because of social distancing and banks staff own safety. So there could be a possibility that some of the controls are not so prominent and their focus is also just to process the transactions. So in that case, and add to that SOD kind of controls not working, so there is a possibility that increase in payment or banking related frauds are on high. Third parties in distress or their solvency risk creating situation of fraud. Let's take an example. I have a warehouse provider and where I have stored my inventories, and this warehouse provider is not able to service his loan. He is under a lot of pressure from the bank to service his loan. What he can do in such situation, he can hypothecate my inventories to the bank. And inventories are not like a real estate or a property which requires too many documentation to prove title. So bank could easily believe that this inventory belongs to the warehouse provider, and this kind of a distress situation, the warehouse provider is able to put my inventory on hypothecation. So I think we need to look at what are our situations or the services which we are rendering from the third party service providers, and if they face any sort of a distress or a solvency risk, can that create an opportunity of fraud for them? Social engineering fraud, I think this is happening in the maximum capacity, again backed by the environment of, like I said, uncertainty and fear. So what are some of the social engineering fraud? It could be in form of spoofed emails coming from fraudsters, which you might think an email coming from WHO employees or CDCs, or let's say in India, you are assuming it is coming from the health authorities, or things like on WhatsApp, somebody is sending you a map on COVID situations, and you click on that map, and that basically that's nothing but a malware from a fraudster. The moment you click the map to know what is the situation, the malware gets into your mobile and your mobile is hacked. Or even in situations, you are getting a kind of a call, and this caller is a fraudster, and you feel, and the message is that this call from health authorities asking for certain information, and they ask you to press number 3, number 9, whatever, and the moment you press those numbers, the hackers are able to hack malware inside your mobile and can pull out all the data. So these are some of the typical social engineering frauds which fraudsters are trying to mobilize on. Document frauds also. Document frauds in the sense that because a lot of us are working from home, delivery of documents also in some cases are not going to the usual bank offices. People are asking shipment documents, other sometimes important banking documents, or even contracts to go to an BCP site, or even to the personal residences of the employees. So in that case, imagine a fraudster sending a spoofed email to your admin guy, and your admin guy is assuming this is coming from an employee, and they ask them to send the documents to a different address, and of course the admin guy is not supposed to validate whether you stay there or not. He just rely on that email, and he sends those documents. So I think again, these sort of frauds, we have seen some instances of these frauds globally picking up. Moving on, some other examples. Increase in INR frauds, and when I say INR frauds, these doesn't mean Indian rupee. Like I mentioned, because of the bulk of transactions today happening online, so what is typically happening is a lot of businesses are opening online shopping websites, and where now you log into those shops, put your order, pay your money, and then imagine what happens. Nothing happens, because some of them are fraudulent websites. The moment you pay the money, there is a INR fraud, which means items not received. So this is now a typical fraud which is on increase, where because of imagine huge volumes of commercial happening online, fraudsters are opening online shops, which people like us assume that they are genuine online stores. You order there, you pay the money, and the goods doesn't come. And in fact, on that, even US HSI, which is the Homeland Security investigation, they launched investigation which they call it as Operation Stolen Promise, because what is happening is these kind of online shops or emails, they promise the goods would be delivered and nothing comes, because you pay and you are falling trap to those fraudsters, and it's like a promise which is never fulfilled. So they call it as Operation Stolen Promise. So the HSI, the Homeland Security investigation, they are alerting people in US specifically to make sure that they don't fall prey to these sort of INR or fake website frauds. Another fraud which is picking up in this current situation is improper dissemination of MNPI. MNPI is materially non-public information. So because of a lot of people working from home, there could be a possibility that by mistake or deliberately, some of the confidential information has been slipped out. And that's where I was reading an article that SEC, Security Exchange Commission in US, they have warned the publicly traded companies that they make sure that there are adequate controls for the employees within their organization who are handling material information, proprietary confidential information, that those informations are not getting out into public domain. So material non-public information going out can be a huge possibility on back of the work from home kind of a situation. And also given, on the agri side, I thought this is an important example to share. We are seeing heightened risk of food fraud related frauds. So what is happening is a lot of food regulatory authorities like the FDA in US, for example, even they are facing challenges in terms of mobility, that in a normal circumstances they would typically visit the factories to check the food samples, to check the various ingredients. Some of those checks they are not able to do. Some of those checks they are doing online. So imagine in that situation, there is a possibility that the oversight and controls on some of those food related regulation checks and balances is not very strong, which can lead to an opportunity of increased fraud in this food related environment, where the factories are supplying fruit and somebody can take an advantage within an organization. If they see the lack of oversight from the regulators, they might try to compromise on the quality, which might create problem for the ultimate consumers. So again, like I said, this is not a laundry list, but I think some important aspects, the types of frauds which we are seeing, and all of us as an internal auditor, something which we should be wary about. And I guess overall, if you see also possibility of fraud risk getting heightened at even country levels today. So imagine in US, a couple of weeks back, Trump announced a CARES Act where they were distributing in excess of, I think, $7 trillion. Out of that, 2 trillion directly to the American citizens, and some 5 trillion in terms of loans to small businesses. And given the requirement was that funds have to be reaching the citizens and the receivers very fast, so they are cutting across all the red tape, all the protocols. And in that, I'm sure if some controls are compromised, there is a huge opportunity of fraud. Already I was reading some articles where it was saying they are seeing so many millions of application for loan disbursement coming from the businesses which never existed. So imagine 7.2 trillion, if it has to be distributed in a couple of months, a 1% fraud of that amount is like 7 billion plus of fraud. So I think a lot of opportunities for the fraudster in these change environment, which I think as an internal auditor, we need to reflect back within our businesses, given these current situation, what are the fraud risks that are getting heightened, and what are we doing about that? And one thing which we need to be careful is fraud risk cannot be eliminated totally. I think all of us as an auditor should clearly know that we can never eliminate fraud. There is no organization which can come and tell you that there was no fraud in their organization. If somebody tells you, I would say that itself is the biggest fraud. So we can never eliminate fraud, but we have to continuously ensure that we reduce the possibility of fraud from happening. I think that is one direction as an auditor we should work at. And these are some of the examples which I thought is useful for us to really see how we could look back in our own scenarios and see what we could do about that. And like I said, what should we do to really protect these frauds? First and foremost, I think it is important to encourage skepticism, be extra cautious in these times, strengthen controls around master data controls. I think is where I do see a lot of frauds originate, especially the payment related frauds. They do originate from master data related gaps, control gaps. Then revisit your payment controls. Just look at the entire chain of payment control. Does anything requires kind of an overlay of controls? Be aware of all this fraudulent emails, spoofed emails. I think this is one of the most common ways a fraudster are doing through social engineering. I think then the most important point is, which is this point number 5, enhanced remote monitoring process. I guess this is also a way forward for us as an internal auditor. We need to make sure that how we as a function are able to, and not only we as a IA function, equally applicable to our organizations, that how the organization also is developing going forward ability to enhance their remote monitoring skills. Because we have seen a pandemic like of situation can, and this is not the last pandemic that is going to happen. So if this kind of a situation can come or can prevail, one of the lessons I think we need to learn is how we increase our ability to monitor controls remotely. Whether it is, I think it has to be largely by leveraging technology and some innovative thinking. So I think we'll have to really work very closely with the business teams, and internal audit has a good opportunity to really kind of take a leadership position in thrusting the organization in this kind of direction. Introduce dual approval process, again on line of, like I said, encouraging skepticism, and increase review of trade debtors, vendors, inventories. Basically, these are the places which where your working capital will get choked, and in the current environment, I think, and also these are the places where some of the fraudulent transactions are also getting parked. So confirmation from the debtors, vendors is again an important step. So nothing unusual, a lot of this all of us are aware, but I think really again making sure that we re-emphasize on that. And the bottom line here in terms of controlling and reducing fraud is encouraging skepticism. Go back and see in your context wherever we could put additional layer. So I think that was, I talked about some of the heightened risk, and I talked about in some detail about the fraud risk. Now, in terms of the overall internal control environment, what could be the response from the IA function? So like I said, today is a situation of heightened business risk. And if in the heightened business risk, we continue with BAU controls, which means if we continue in the heightened business risk with the business as usual control, we are going to be left with a higher residual risk. So which is not a situation which organization wants. So if in a COVID situation, we are saying that some of the risks are getting inherently heightened because of the heightened risk, which I talked about, then I think we need to have an exceptional control response. And if I am able to put an exceptional control response, I'm able to limit my residual risk. So again, I think this is one direction which we should work with, where if we are agreeing that in COVID, there are certain risks which are getting heightened, then at the same time, when I say that, I think it is important to realize that if the risks are getting heightened, my business as usual control might not give me the same level of assurance. If I continue to work with business as usual control, it will lead to a higher residual risk. So I will have to put exceptional controls, overlay of controls, additional control, even if it is temporarily. I mean, post-COVID, when things settle down, you could still remove those controls. But I think for the time being, there are certain controls where if you are saying the risks are getting heightened, we will have to increase those controls, so to make sure that we are not leaving a higher residual risk on the table. But at the same time, when I say this, I think let us not remove focus from some of the basic of strong governance, which is making sure that there are right amount of policies and procedures in place, the culture is right in the organization, and the state of technology is it's not stale, and it's been updated. And I think among all this, the most important element is ensuring that we have the right culture in the organization. So although in COVID, like I mentioned, there are certain components of heightened risk which leads to look at some of the heightened controls that we need to take care, but at the same time making sure we do keep a good eye, we don't take our eye off on some of these important elements, having the right policies and procedure, having the right culture, and having the right technology. And out of this, I think there is a reason why I put culture in the middle, because this is the core. Culture is the core for any strong governance. We might have best of the systems, best of the technologies, best of the management, best of the people, but if the culture of the organization is not correct, it is not right, sooner or later as an organization, we are going to be facing huge challenge. So make sure that we keep our focus on some of these elements, some of these basic things also at the same time. So some of the other aspects where internal audit needs to realign is we need to be agile in our planning in the current times. I think if there are certain heightened risk, which requires additional review by the IA function, I think we should quickly go to the board audit committees, escalate some of these heightened risk, which might not have materialized, but because the environment is such, create that alert with your board audit committees, ask them that you would need to spend some time and which might need aligning or adjusting your audit plans which were prepared few months back when nobody has thought about this COVID situation. Please go ahead and do that. Enhanced desktop based audit. I think this is a good time for us to really continue to leverage automated oversight. I think a lot of us as an internal audit function have successfully moved on and embarked on the desktop audit methodology. Continue to work on that, because beyond COVID also there are going to be a continuous gains and benefit coming from leveraging technology. Take management sign off. I think this is one thing we should continue to do, specifically for the areas which are getting compromised by the IS function inability to travel. For example, inventory. If you can't go on ground to get an assurance, count that inventory, ask the management to give you a sign off for that. I think so. Think about some of the elements where an on-site review is not happening from an IA function, which in result might lead to kind of suboptimal assurance there. I think ensure that you get the management sign off as a deterrence, as a reassurance that things are in order. And also, like we did, we also prepared some self-assessment questionnaires as part of our desktop audit methodology from any businesses that we were auditing, to quickly get a sense of how much they are getting impacted as a result of COVID. So are there any contract defaults they are seeing? Are there any delays in shipment? Are there some frauds? So just think through what are some of the things that you would need to know from the businesses, which can, on a single page, simple questionnaire of 8 or 10 question, that can give you a sense of how much of that business has got impacted as a result of COVID. I think we should do that, because this is not a normal questionnaire. And also I think this will get a sense to the businesses that internal audit is a thinking function. They are really thinking and asking question which really matters, rather than playing the same old playbook which we have been doing all this while. I think this is a good opportunity for all of us as a IA function to demonstrate that we think forward, we think at the moment, and we are not really going by the old slate, by the old way of doing things. So lastly, I think on my closing comments, it is a good time it is a good time for us to really modernize, readjusting our ERM framework. I think we should all look at, and within the enterprise risk management framework, the BCP was one thing I think which has slapped us very strongly. In all the ERM framework, business continuity and disaster recovery planning was one element which all the risk managers and even a lot of CEOs have totally ignored. And I think COVID has strongly pushed them back on the wall, and COVID has told them, you better respect the BCP processes. I think a lot of global CEOs worldwide, they have been shouting left, right, center about sustainability and that the earth will destroy and this and that. I think nobody really thought about pandemic could hit them. I mean, sustainability is a risk, but it might hit you in next 30, 50, 100 years. And all of the CEOs worldwide were shouting at top of their voice about sustainability risk, because maybe I think that gives a good optics about the organization these days. Nobody really, all of them got off guard. However, flamboyant those CEOs worldwide, nobody except, I think, my limited understanding, I think Bill Gates somewhere last year, he mentioned that we will soon be in a grip of pandemic, which will change the situation for the whole world. I think aside of Bill Gates, nobody, to my knowledge, I might be wrong here, but my understanding, apart from Bill Gates, nobody was, even the best of the CEOs of Silicon Valleys and anybody you could imagine, nobody thought that a pandemic will come and it will cripple and it will bring all the biggest economies of the world back on their knees. So I think good time for us to really think about BCP, for which nothing was done, only all of us, including IA function. I think we'll have to also see how much did we seriously looked at that, or we were only doing some lip service here. Stress testing the risk models. The risk models, especially in, we test, especially in commodity, because it's a very volatile industry. We test the risk model on volatilities and all. we test on 10-20% volatilities. I think very important that we'll have to not test for a higher volatility, because we have seen in a pandemic situation the stress test has to be further kind of be deeply rooted. Increased level of I think, like I mentioned, important for us to make sure that we increase level of scrutiny through remote testing, given in such a situation where we can't travel. Promote cyber mindfulness within the workforce. Cyber is the way to go. A lot of things are already, I think there is a clear shift that has happened in last few months. People doing most of their day-to-day work online, so which will ensure that the workforce has to be more cyber mindful. If they are not mindful, they might lead the organization into a lot of trouble. Even the organization contingency plans needs to be revisited. A lot of contingency plans are again very standard plans, which might talk about contingencies, planning about the C-suites only. Okay, after the CEO, this would be the next CEO or the COO or the CFO. But this pandemic has given a way for us to see that there are other roles within the organization which are even far more critical. An organization can today work without a CEO, but they can't work without a IT officer. So I think the contingency plan need to see, are they really picking those important roles back into the contingency plans? They might also need to be revisited. So finally, I think, like I said, all of the challenges, they also bring at the same time a good opportunity for us. Every dark cloud has a silver lining, and if we only keep looking down, I think we miss the rainbow. So it is a good opportunity for us, for IA function. We are in such a unique position, having a good kind of a helicopter view about the organization, where we could get a sense of what changes we could bring on back of COVID, which could help organization, and all the more which could also help IA to come out as a function which is innovative and which thinks forward. So take a pause and see how we could realign our priorities, ensure that our organizations are building greater resilience. Reskilling, I think we'll have to start. So distances are back. Earlier, because so far pre-COVID, there was an era of globalization. I think post-COVID, a lot of people are saying localization would be the flavor. People there, because of the travel restriction, travel bans, these are not going to go straight away. It is not that tomorrow offices are going to open and suddenly it is back to pre-COVID. I think it is going to easily take few years for us possibly to go back to a pre-COVID. So distances are back. So there will be a localization flavor. So the businesses again, then probably they need to think whether they need to look at their supply chains which are not dependent upon supplies from overseas, and what roles within if the distance economies are and distances are going to play a role. What are some of the skill set working locally that they might need to enhance? Identifying opportunities to innovate. I think irrespective of COVID or non-COVID, IA as a function has to continuously think about opportunities which we could leverage by innovating, by leveraging technology. And I think, like I mentioned, keep a strong focus on the basics. So while there are new things happening around us, we have to be cognizant of that. We have to take a step forward, think innovatively, but at the same time, making sure that we don't take our eyes off the basics. And when I say this, I think I would like to close by mentioning, one of the quotes from Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. So one day, somebody asked Jeff Bezos that, okay, Jeff, what is your view of future? What do you think might change in 10 years? So Jeff Bezos says, honestly, I don't care about things that might change after 10 years. I care about things that won't change even after 10 years. He said, even after 10 years, I would have customers who will come to me and they will ask me, Jeff, can you deliver me this product cheaper and faster? So I think it is, again, for us also as a IA function, while we have to keep an eye on the future, innovation and problem solving and way forward, at the same time, I think let us not leave an eye and let us not get our eyes off some of the core areas which defines the strength of a governance, which is, like I said, policies, procedures, technology, and above all, the culture of the organization. So I think keep a strong focus on the basic, at the same time keep a good eye on how we are going to move forward and innovate and give a very strong response, a forward-looking response from an IA function in terms of realigning and repositioning ourselves. So I guess this is it from my side. I'm happy to take any questions at this stage.
Yes, sir, we have some questions. First question from Mr. Stanay. He's asking you, in your opinion, will the operating management will devote as much time to internal audit post COVID as they were doing pre-COVID? I guess the operating management will be overloaded with solving raw material issues, logistics, manpower, multiple reporting, leaving minimal or no time for internal audit.
Right. I think excellent question and a very pertinent and relevant question. I think very rightly said today, where the businesses are facing challenges about continuity, about their own existence. Internal audit is the last thing in their mind. But I think at the same time, the organization also need assurance that there are adequate amount of systems, processes, and control. So I guess it is also important for us as an internal audit function that we are able to bring that balance with the organization, and it is on to us how well we are able to explain that posturing, and also we are able to realign our approach and looking at the reality of the situation where we need to give breathing space to the businesses where they are reopening and try to really settle down and put their foot forward. At the same time, we should not be expecting them to be fully available for audit. So we will have to bring some balance. At the same time, totally ignoring internal audit, totally ignoring controls and assurances is also not a way forward. So I think bringing the balance is important for us, and that is up to us as an internal audit function, what proposition we bring on the table, telling them what are the bare minimums that we would need to review to make sure ultimately it is for their own benefit. I think if they lose their eye on some of those important elements, only the business is going to suffer, which is in nobody's interest.
Thank you, sir. Another question from Melvin. In work from home situation, what are the best methods to remotely perform internal audit and control reviews of business functions, transactions, especially for locations that we would usually physically visit for the review?
So I think there is no single answer to that. See, first of all, as an IA function, the advantage is the teams who are performing the audit, if they've already visited those businesses previously in a pre-COVID situation. So I think even in the current situation, if they are doing those audit from home, but at the same time, they could really visualize and understand what is it that they need to review. So I don't think there is going to be much change in what they are going to review. How they are going to review is obviously going to be different. And I think on those components, how they are going to review, they have to really see what elements of their review are getting compromised by their inability to be physically there on site. Just make an inventory of those elements and see that for those elements, what is the best way of getting the assurance. Because imagine if they ask that, okay, management, that inventory, you get me an assurance from the management. In this case, even the management cannot go to the warehouse because the warehouse are also in lockdown. So then what is the second best option? So maybe it could be a sign off from a management to ensuring that at least the information has the integrity. So I think, like I said, we'll have to really sit and see what areas within audit are getting compromised due to lack of our on-site or ability to be there, and for those areas just make an inventory list, and what could be the compensating controls we could ask the businesses in the given environment and ask their assurance through those.
Another question, sir. Since mobility is restricted, how can internal audit maintain the quality of audit and assurance as was the case earlier?
So I think that is the challenging, the most challenging part. So how do we ensure that we don't compromise on the overall quality of our review is a challenge, no doubt about that. And I mean, all of us, most of us, I would say, would agree that the level of assurance which we give when we are there on the field versus the level of assurance which we are able to give in a desktop or a remote audit cannot be the same. So our attempt has to be how we minimize that gap. And like, I think this is, I can reflect on our own example, how we are trying to handle this is, we are saying, okay, desktop audit has given me an opportunity to further deep dive into picking data and leveraging on data. So I'm leveraging a lot of ability of using data analytics and sniffing into data even at a very exponentially higher rate, which sometimes I might compromise because I am on the field. So I am seeing that although by being on the field, if there are certain areas which I'm not able to do, can I compensate that by looking at data which is available, maybe increase my scrutiny through analytics or some other ways where I deep dive into data. So the answer is, I think, go and deep dive into data. I think data tells you a lot of things. It is more strenuous, it requires a lot of effort, but I think if we deep dive into data, whether through data analytics or ability to really churn out and do data mining and look at the data patterns and trends, I think that could give us, if not more, I think it can give us the same level of assurance.
Thanks, sir. Another question from Ravin. In this pandemic, many times the store department has procured the material on advance basis and without followed proper process, like without purchase order, and said due to COVID-19 we make these purchases. How to deal with these situations?
So if I understood the question correctly, Chanchal, they're saying they have already procured the material without a proper authorization, and now we have a COVID where they're not able to do the sales and shipment. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yes, sir, that is the question.
Okay, so I think if they procured the material without proper processes, whether it is COVID or non-COVID, that itself is an issue that the businesses need to explain. And of course, I think if it's a purchase which is unwarranted, or it was just a positional purchase, hoping that the market goes up and they are able to sell in a COVID situation where because of demand disruption or supply chain disruption, they're not able to sell, of course, they will have to take those price position losses in their books. I mean, and that's a hard learning that they have to live with.
Thanks, sir. Another question. Internal audit hold on sustainability of this. Is that a business to think for, or is there any IAS internal audits contribution?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, Naveen is asking, J.R. Naveen, internal audits hold on sustainability of which, is that a business to think for, or is there any internal audits contribution?
So if I understood the question clearly, Naveen is asking what is the role of internal audit on sustainability? Is it left to the management, or does IA have a role? I would say IA has a limited role in sustainability because we are not the subject matter expert. But at the same time, within the organization, sustainability is anchored by, let's say, CRS teams and all. So whatever processes the CRS team has in place relating to sustainability, the IF function need to do a process level review whenever they are doing those audits to make sure whether those processes are followed or not, and then give that feedback to CRS, which will ultimately help the organization.
Can we take more questions, sir?
Okay, I can take a couple of more questions. I can't go outside. So.
Okay. So another question from Madhuri. In business where sales person has to meet the customers for document collection, there is a risk from sales front. As per your view, how can we mitigate risk in this situation?
Okay, so you're saying in the given situation where some documents has to reach the customers, and in the given situation because of COVID, we can't physically give the documents to the customer. How do we deal with that situation? Is that the question?
I think collection of documents, sir.
From the customers directly, is it?
Yeah.
So I think one is making sure if the customers are not able to in person give the documents, is there a channel by utilizing the services of the banks, because they also do some collection of documents depending upon the payment terms that we use. I think that is one option, and I guess the other option is making sure that those documents are coming to the alternate BCP side if they have been there. Otherwise, like I say, some businesses, they are doing is the businesses are reaching to their administration or the admin teams, telling them the address of their employees who are in charge of certain customers, and telling them that these are their legitimate addresses, and once that goes through an internal approval process, the documents could be served to those alternate address. But I think this option has to be performed very carefully, as like I mentioned earlier, it could be vulnerable to fraud risk.
Madhuri asking, we have a risk of forgery by sales. How can we mitigate the risk? This risk.
Risk of forged sales, yeah.
Forgery, yeah. Forgery.
Yeah. So basically, I think this risk is I guess can happen in any situation, COVID, non-COVID. I think if the risk is somebody creating a forged documents, we need to ensure that there is a adequate approval process by the person, maker, checker, control, like we say, the person who's making the contract and the person who's approving the contract has to be different. And also, I think the other important aspect is counter confirmation from the other counterparty. So if it's a sale contract, get them confirmed by the counterparties. And if there is a forgery risk, which we see is heightened because of some past precedents in the organization, then I think you'll have to pick up the phone and ask the customer to confirm about those contracts, because if you're not trusting that the signatures are forged or fudged, callback is another alternate to get an assurance on the authenticity of the contracts.
Thanks, sir. Another question from Kashyap. Will internal audit function get the back seat or front seat post-COVID?
See, COVID has got nothing to do with back or front seat. If the function is not innovative, if the function, see, the I would say success of internal audit, the core of internal audit success lies in understanding of the business, understanding of the business nuances, and auditing what matters. So, and which is always changing. So as long as we do that as a IF function, we would be successful. And as long as while doing that, we engage with all the stakeholders, we would be successful. So COVID, non-COVID, people can hide behind COVID. I think lazy IF functions can hide behind COVID as a reason for them not being successful, but COVID has got nothing to do with, I mean, COVID is rather an opportunity for IF functions to, like I said, seize that opportunity and even being more successful. But I think the basics of audit is, it's all about your understanding about the businesses. If you don't understand your organization business, IF function in past was never successful. In future also, IF function can never be successful without understanding the businesses and without, if they're not engaging with the stakeholders. COVID also, I think it is continuing on the same playbook. You have to understand with COVID, what is it that matters for the organization. Look at those areas, talk to your key stakeholders, give them the assurance that you are there with them, you are there to help them. And I think they see you as somebody who's part and parcel of the whole management system rather than an IA function who's at top or on side or somewhere else.
Sir, we have two questions more.
Okay.
So Jaya is asking again, since you had mentioned on data analytics, on a high level, what kind of review would COVID may demand? Another question, high risk touch point, if any, to share.
So I understood the data analytics part. What is the second part, Chanchal?
This is a high risk touch point, if any, to share.
Okay. So I think what I shared is some of the example that comes to my mind, and some of them would be applicable to other industries and businesses. But like I said, I think this is a very individual thing and specific to the respective organization. It's not a case of one size fit all. So we'll have to see what are the areas for our businesses which are getting threatened because of COVID. And in general, I think it has to do with counterparties, because when we say disruption, I think it is the counterparties which get disrupted, right? Because they are the living beings in the whole system. So the counterparties and your inventories and fraud risk, I think most of those elements which I discussed are largely applicable to most of the businesses. Coming to data analytics, again, I think we need to see which areas of heightened risk or fraud risk are playing around in our organization, and how we leverage data analytics to get more insights into those areas. Again, some of the areas could be like reviewing your master data changes, reviewing your payment controls, duplicate payments, then I mean, reviewing your banking controls, bank authorizations. I mean, again, something very, very specific to the organization, but I would say payment related controls or something around banking controls. Master data control is something which all of us should be more vigilant about these days.
So, we can take last question, then we will.
Okay.
How to identify high risk audit issues in shortest span of time? Is there any best practice that can be deployed across all industries?
So it's really asking for a magical solution. Sorry, there is no magic to finding a high risk issue. It's a very internal audit is a very intense process. It does involve very deep insights about the business. So whoever has asked this question, my answer to them is sorry, there is no shortcut. It high risk issue or finding good issues or doing a good audit, it is really a matter of having deep insights, good business understanding, combining some of these elements. That's where an audit is successful. There is no shortcut to that.
Thank you, sir. I'm just having a small feedback poll and hand it over to the Amit sir.
Right. Thanks, Shailendra, for all your views, and I totally appreciate this. And thanks to all the participants as well for taking out time for this session. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thanks, sir, and thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye-bye.